All right, everybody, welcome back to the Saturday in Athens GA podcast. My name is Marshall Barton, and I'm so pleased to tell you that it is finally Tennessee Hate Week. The Dogs travel up to Tennessee to play the Volunteers. It's going to be a great game. Very excited to see Georgia finally get to go up against an SEC opponent, one we hate nonetheless. It's very exciting times for the Georgia Bulldogs. We're going to go and jump right into it. I'm going to give you a little bit of review from last week, what I saw in week 2. And then we're going to get right into Georgia versus Tennessee previews. Let's go and do that. Let's get straight into it. Our offensive line looked really bad against Austin Peay. Of all the things that I could point out, I could criticize Gunner. I could criticize, the fumbles. The offensive line was where the problems started. We struggled very many times in the last 2 games to just do simple pass protections, which is very concerning against lesser teams. Imagine what that could look like if we don't get our guys back for bigger games. That being said, we'll probably get some of our more experienced guys more healthy and ready to go for those games. Gunner needs to throw the ball with confidence. We need to see a confident Gunner Stockton if we want to make it far this season for Georgia. He sees the open read. He sees the open throw. For some reason, he decides not to throw it a lot of times. If you go back and watch film, he'll be looking at the open receiver and just doesn't throw it for some reason, for whatever reason. Sometimes he doesn't throw it at all. Sometimes he waits a second or two. But we've got to see how to Gunner to feel more confident about this Georgia team is just see him throw the ball to the open man. It's as simple as that. Final takeaway from week 2 against Austin Peay. Georgia's defense is elite. Georgia's defense is one of the best in the country. It will be, in my opinion. Though we haven't played very good talent to prove that yet, Georgia's defense is elite, will continue to be elite. Fire, passion, energy, team speed, you name it, it's all there for Georgia. So again, going back at that bad offensive line, struggling to do simple pass protections, bad push up front, little to no push up front really from that offensive line. We'd love to see that get fixed. Gunner, find the open man. Defense, keep doing your job. That's what we saw Georgia versus Austin Peay. We get a clean slate this weekend, a new chance against a team we hate. Tennessee. God, I hate them. Golly, I hate them so much. You have no idea. Unless you've been following the page for a while, you have no idea. But they haven't really played a real team or a real defense yet this season. Syracuse returned 3 2-3 offensive starters. They put up 26 points on Tennessee in 4 quarters of football. If Gunner can play with some confidence, our offensive line doesn't just completely collapse. I'm very excited to see what it could look like for our offense against that defense. They have not really played a defense like ours either. Obviously, they haven't played a team like us, but they really haven't played a defense like us. And I think they're in for definitely a reckoning this weekend when the Dogs take on the Volunteers. Our offense will look different, in my opinion. We're going to push the ball downfield more. I am confident, even though I have those concerns about Gunner, I do think he'll push the ball downfield more. I do think Mike Bebber will open up the playbook just a little bit. Tennessee will also be without their 2 starting cornerbacks in Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson, who I remember Georgia went after quite a few years ago in recruiting. So they're without those 2 guys. They've got 2 backups who definitely aren't as experienced or talented. There's a Colorado transfer corner for Tennessee who maybe has the experience, but obviously neither of them have the proposed talent of those other guys. So I'm excited, not excited for their injury. I'm not cheering anyone's injury on. Excited to see that the Dogs definitely have a little bit of an edge there. Even if those players were playing, Georgia has an edge there for sure. Ernest Green and Juan Gaston, it'll probably be closer to game time decision. I expect them both to play, however. They've been making good progress. Kirby has noted that. Kirby has said that. They've showed good progress in practice. They've moved well in their individual periods at practice. I expect them both to play, but we'll see as time goes on. Also wanted to bring up another note. We're praying for Ethan Barber. Ethan Barber had a horrific leg injury this past Saturday. Seeing it in person was bad, but I pray for him, pray for his quick and speedy recovery. I know he's a great player. He's been playing a lot of snaps for Georgia through only 2 weeks as a true freshman, so he can definitely make a big impact. That's besides the point, though. Just praying for him in a full recovery and a speedy recovery. We're going to go ahead and jump even deeper into this pregame analysis. Georgia's won 8 straight against Tennessee. We all know the story. Dogs own Tennessee as of late. We won 31-17 last year in a game that College Game Day also showed up for. So College Game Day is back this year, unfortunately from hell, as it's in Tennessee. Both the teams are 2-0 right now. One game's against lesser opponents. Georgia played a lot of backups and saw some struggles. Tennessee unloaded the clip against some of the teams they played, specifically Eastern Tennessee or whoever they played last week. I believe it was ETSU. But I'm just not really sold on them yet. Um, and I don't think I will be. I think Georgia will come in and pretty much own this football game. Dogs are favored by a 3.5 point spread. That being said, ESPN FPI, which I think is crap, not just because of this, but just in general. But anyway, they give Tennessee a 51.5% advantage to a 48.5% number for Georgia. When we were looking at our pregame analysis, so the analysis we do weekly with Hammy and We Are Bulldogs, UGA Rush, and Georgia Dogs coverage, we decided to give the quarterback position to Tennessee. Not really because I've seen anything out of Joey Aguilar that I think is really that impressive. I'm not, again, not sold on him either. I just think Gunnar has struggled to show confidence thus far in the season, which is why we gave that to Tennessee from the quarterback position. But our keys to winning: open up the playbook, trust your reads, offensive line needs to show up. If Gunnar doesn't decide to take some deep shots, or if we just can't get any push up front, it could be a long day for Georgia. But this is all about Georgia needs to play to its standard. Georgia needs to do its job. It's not necessarily that Tennessee can do anything, in my opinion, to win this game other than take advantage of Georgia's mistakes. Georgia's defense just needs to be themselves, own the line of scrimmage, and really it comes down to the fact that Kirby Smart knows how to stop Josh Heupel in his gimmicky offense. Keep what you've been doing. Like it's nothing new. This is what it's been every single time we played Tennessee. We just got to go out and do it yet again. So as you can tell, I'm fired up for this game. I'm excited for what Georgia brings to the table, and especially flying under the radar. I expect Georgia to really shock a lot of people. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and head to this interview with Hammy. We're going to talk a little bit further about Gunnar Stockton, the offensive line, and what we think about this weekend. All right, everyone, we're back with Hammy. We're going to talk about Georgia, Tennessee today. Georgia is obviously going into its first SEC game of the season, first road game of the season, biggest test so far, one of the biggest tests so far for Gunnar Stockton. See if he is truly the quarterback for Georgia. Can he handle SEC play? We'll figure out this weekend. Hammy, first question for you on that same note of Gunnar Stockton. Is the concern we saw last week kind of from the fan base collectively about maybe him not taking enough shots downfield, maybe not throwing some passes, seeing his reads and trusting his reads quick enough? Some of the other concerns maybe. Is the concern for Gunnar legit right now, or is it a little overhyped? Do you think he'll be okay? Do you think we'll get past that initial concern?
Yeah, man, I kind of fall in the middle with this. I think it's a product of what the play calling was and has been these first two games. I stand by the fact that Bobo has not opened up the playbook, which has not let Gunner kind of maybe get comfortable in it on the bad side of things, but also like we're not showing people what we're gonna do now that we have a real opponent ahead of us in Neyland Stadium. So I'm a little kind of on the fence about it. I am obviously a little bit concerned, just as everybody holds those concerns. I think Gunner has maybe not done what we expected him to do with the talent that's around him. He's got one of the strongest receiving cores in the country. Why not just throw it up? Somebody's down there, right? Well, I think it's because of the playbook, but going through the reads, things like that, he has struggled to do. He's a little tuck and run right now, a little too quick. It's one read, and then it's either the check down to Zachariah Branch, which isn't a bad option, or tuck it and run. So I'm a little bit concerned, but I'm not all the way concerned like some of these people are on social media and stuff. I think this will be, like you said, a true test for Gunner. This is, about as good of a defense that he will see since really Notre Dame. I mean, Tennessee is a playoff caliber team. They have a playoff caliber defense. I think Arian Carter at linebacker is one of the great linebackers in the SEC this year. So it's definitely going to be the challenge, be a challenge for Gunner. But I'm excited to see him. I'm excited for him to get out there in an away environment. First time he's ever worn the white jersey, which is going to be a good look with the 1-4 on it. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be loud. We'll see how he can handle it. But I also don't want him to get away from the run. I don't want him to force it into these uncomfortable situations. If the read isn't there, don't throw it into triple coverage like Carson Beck did last year. You can tuck it and run. It's okay to do that. But maybe just get through one more read. So that's where I stand on Gunner. It's a lot, but yeah, right on the middle of the fence, I guess.
I think that's definitely a fair take at the moment. I know Aaron Murray was kind of talking about that, like, hey, he's moving through his reads too quickly. Like, there was one play, even I was watching it after I'd listened to Aaron's film or his film review, and I'm like, Zach was wide open on the sit down. Like, it's just some, I don't even want to call it confidence things. I think more maybe it's experience. But I will say, I definitely agree with you. I do think Bobo has sort of hidden the playbook, and for good reason, right? Like some fans don't really know. Like we're not trying to, and that's not a shot at anyone, but just some people don't know. Like we're not trying to show SEC opponents what we can do against smaller teams because no one really cares. And I think sometimes teams like Tennessee will fall into that trap of let's see what we can do against a smaller team. No one really cares. But now we've got, I feel like a lot more film on them than they have on us, which I love the breakdown on that. I also think for sure I don't have any criticisms of Bobo's play calling yet because there's been no need to really create a unique game plan. No need to push anything. I know I've been pretty vocally critical of the way the second half ended, but more than anything, that still falls on the offensive line, which actually perfectly leads us into this next question. I'll break it down into two parts.
Okay.
What do we need to see out of the offensive line this weekend to feel good about Georgia's offense for 2025?
I think the first things first is establishing the run. Kirby harped on it all offseason, throughout fall camp, and into really these first 2 weeks. We have to establish the run. And I think there is serious concern on the offensive line because that really has yet to happen. I do, if you go back to Jake Fromm, I think was like 1-8, 1-7, somewhere around there, maybe 0-8, but the stats crazy when he threw over 30 passes. That's kind of like Gunner. Gunner doesn't need to be put in a situation where he has to throw it 30, 35, 40 times a game. Um, and that starts with the offensive line establishing the run game. And that's not just the offensive line. You've got to have the backs behind them to find the holes and things like that. But I think this offensive line has to take advantage of being bigger. I really do think this offensive line is one of the heaviest set groups we've had in a long time. And I think they can show that power and that it will have to come out in this first SEC game. So, yes, I'm concerned. But what I need to see is them getting that run game established because then you put Gunner in a more comfortable situation. Like I said, you don't want him throwing a million passes per game. You got to run the rock. You got to tote the rock. And that's what Georgia's been our entire lives, before our lives. I mean, that's the end game for Georgia football. A jet sweep, a halfback dive, anything like that. Just establish it, and that starts on the O line.
Yeah, I even mentioned that last week in a segment I was not interviewing you on, but it's like Georgia doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. Georgia doesn't need to do anything super flashy. Just be physical, be able to run the football, and people be able to impose your will. And definitely to that note of how big our linemen are. And I know it's Austin P we're playing last week, so that probably factors in a little bit. But even still, just looking at our offensive linemen, it's like dang, that they are a lot bigger than everyone they've played so far, and probably will either be that way or maybe there might be a team or two that can compete. Like Georgia's offensive line, whatever you say about Searles, which there's probably a lot to say on that right now. He's recruited some big offensive linemen, so that's one thing I'll definitely give him. The second part of that question being though, uh, does getting Juan Gaston and Ernest Green back this week? Obviously, they've been out. Ernest Green's definitely been limited. Juan Gaston's been out for a little while now. Does that make a huge difference for this Georgia line?
I think so. I would, the argument should be experience, which for Ernest Green it is, but for Gaston, it's not. He's a freshman this year. We've seen him for literally a quarter of football. Not even, I don't think. I think he got hurt in the Marshall game before the end of the first quarter, whatever it was. But I do think it helps. They were the starters in game one for a reason. I think Gaston is a special talent, and he might not be the All American this year, but for the future of Georgia football, he will be the leader of that offensive line group. Starting as a freshman at the University of Georgia on the O line is a task that not many have done. So I was super impressed in the little bit of film that we do have on Gaston, and then what Ernest Green was before his back injury in 24, and what has come about in the past few weeks with back stiffness. But that 2023 season, Ernest Green was an absolute baller. Like he was a stud on the offensive line. He was, projected first round picks in the near future, all that good stuff, and he kind of regressed, and it's because of that injury. But I think he can take that step forward as the leader in that locker room. So getting them back, having them paired next to guys like Micah Morris and Drew Bobo, I feel like they're the most familiar group. And I think that's one thing that people might overlook when talking about an offensive line. But playing next to somebody that you've played with next to for a while helps a ton on the O line. Whether you're pulling guard, whether you're, hitting the A gap, whatever it is, that is a huge, huge portion of being on the offensive line. It's working as a unit. It's not a one-man job. So playing next to those guys that they're familiar with is going to be big. So getting Ernest and Gaston back should be a big addition, should be a big help for this Georgia team in this Tennessee game.
Absolutely. Juan Gaston is the first Georgia freshman offensive lineman to start since Andrew Thomas, I believe.
Yeah.
So definitely a huge accomplishment there for him. Not often we see it, as you said. And then on the note of Ernest Green, that 2023 season really was a great year for him. I feel like he got better as each game went on for the most part. So it's definitely unfortunate that he battled those injuries that he did have last year and now this year. But I'm hopeful that they'll both be back. At the moment, I expect that they'll both be back this weekend, but I don't have a real for sure indicator on that. That's going to be closer to game day, game time, I would assume.
Yeah.
Flipping the talk to the defensive side of the ball, though. Obviously, through two games, a lot of fans, a lot of people around Georgia or around Georgia football and college football have been saying that Georgia's defense looks a lot more like its old self, even though we're playing two much lesser talented teams. Looks a lot more like itself. A lot of team speed, filling gaps very well from the linebacker group. Defensive line is doing a good job getting some pushback. But is there really is there any liability defensively for Georgia right now? Maybe that you've seen in his first two games, or that we could see heading forward as we get into tougher schedules, tougher games in SEC play?
Yeah, man. I think I said it at the beginning of the season. This season is going to come down to the trenches on both sides of the ball. And we've talked about the offensive line and how their importance is of the utmost to this Georgia football team and our success in 2025. And on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's the same thing. Have we seen true weaknesses at that defensive line? Not really, because we've played maybe these inferior opponents that might be the cause of it. But I really do think we're a much stronger unit than we were a year ago, and really even in 2023. I go back to 21 and 22. I think the biggest piece on those two championship teams was our defensive line. We had game wreckers. They're all playing on Sundays. They were all first round picks. In 21, you had Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter. And then 22, you had just Jalen Carter, but he had help around him, and he was the superstar of that crowd. I think this year, having Kristen Miller as a senior leader in that room is a massive, massive plus for this Georgia team. Because next to him, you've got another guy like Elijah Griffin, a young freshman who hasn't seen a lot of college football. He's going to his first SEC football game, but he's just a freak talent. Like, you cannot keep him off the field. So I think we've taken a huge step forward from what was last season on the defensive line. But there still is a little bit of concern because we've just played inferior opponents. So this is the true test. I'm excited to see what Kristen Miller can do as the leader, and then I'm excited to see what Elijah Griffin can do. Behind him, I really can't pick out a weakness in our linebacker core. I mean, those guys are the strongest unit in college football, in my opinion. We are LBU, and we have been for quite a while. We've put more people in the league than any other school at the linebacker position, and I think our two starters in C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson are on their way to playing on Sundays. C.J. is the brains of the organization. He's the quarterback of that defense. He's the leader. He might not have the freakish talent that Raylan does, but that's why he's got Raylan next to him. Raylan is a special talent. He can get in the backfield. He's a true disruptor. And then the guys behind him, and Justin Williams and Chris Cole, are just true sophomores, but they're leaders on this team too. They're vocal guys that have been freak athletes throughout these first two games, and we saw spurts of it last year in 2024. So really no weaknesses there. And then in the backside of the defense, there's maybe some concern on the corner positions, but I think KJ Bolden is one of the best safeties in the country. Caleb Downs obviously takes the title because he's probably the best player overall in the country, but I think KJ is right up there. I think he's a top 5 safety in the country, and he's the leader in that defensive back room. Daniel Harris, whether it's him, whether it's Who else do we have? Daniel Harris. Oh gosh, what? Oh, Ellis. Duh. So you got Ellis Robinson, Daniel Harris. They'll play some join time on the one side, and then Dalen, if he's all the way back healthy, he'll be on the other side of the defensive backfield. And then I've really loved what I've seen in Zion Branch. So I know I went through all of the defensive fields. I think the most concern lies in the defensive line, just because we haven't seen that SEC opponent yet. But I know I rambled for a minute, but sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. I'm glad you hit all three levels of the defense. Zion Branch just looks like a linebacker when you look at
Mhm.
that dude. He looks like a guy you could put down in the box. He'd probably do pretty fine down there.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but then I love what you said about, absolutely. I love what you said about Raylan Wilson. I think disruptor is a perfect word to put on him right now. Through two games, even as good as he has been, it seems like he's taken a step up through two games from last year, which is just great to see. Have hopefully him and CJ really play in rhythm, play together, and we've seen that through two games. I love what I've seen out of Chris Cole on these
Yeah,
pass rushes. That
yeah.
one sack he had last week, I mean, and someone described him as an X factor recently for this defense. I don't know that I disagree. He could really be a special for a Georgia defense that needs some more pass rushing, some more sacks. Where we've seen a drop off the last couple of years. Of course, that's going to happen when you have a 21-22 defense like we did, but getting back to that standard, Chris Cole could be the guy that helps us get there. Um,
Agree.
but the last thing I wanted to discuss, and I do find this to be definitely a topic that some people are going to hear it and be like, I think that's really stupid. But I think it's really meaningful, or could really be true. Georgia's obviously won eight straight against Tennessee. It's been a long time since we've seen Tennessee um, take advantage of a bad Georgia football game and win. Uh, but I just I'm trying to not give them credit as much as I can. But I wanted to ask, has it gotten, I mean, I really am. That's the way I'm trying to word it. Uh, do we feel like it's a mental thing now for Tennessee against Georgia? We've seen that maybe Texas is getting to the point where it's a mental thing against Georgia potentially this year. Alabama, it's definitely been a mental thing for Georgia against Alabama, I feel like, or potentially had been for a long time. Is it getting to the point where anytime Tennessee sees the red and black, it's just a mental thing, or is it Georgia's just that much better talent-wise than Tennessee?
I think I'm not too big on the mental thing, but I totally do think it is a thing, if that makes sense. Is it a mental thing with us for against Bama? Probably. I mean, we have our head coach and King Coach Kirby Smart. We love him, obviously. He as long as he's at the helm, we're going to be a winning football team. But maybe there is a little bit of a mental side to it of, man, I can't just beat the team that I used to coach for. Maybe there's something like that with Tennessee, but I also go back to the fact that we're in the SEC, man. And you get a coach like Josh Heupel in there who played in the SEC, won a championship. Well, sorry, Oklahoma wasn't in the SEC at that time, but won a national championship, was a Heisman finalist. I mean, he's an ultimate competitor, and I think you're in that locker room, and there's no shying away from a battle. So I don't necessarily know if it's a mental thing. I think it's more so we are just that dominant force, and we have been. When the SEC was still split into divisions, that was a bulk of this winning streak that we've had. 6 years of us beating Tennessee when they were in the East and we were in the East. And I think, just seeing a team every single year, year in and year out, can not get repetitive because it's always fun playing Tennessee. They're a huge rival, but it does create a sense of like urgency and I don't know the word I'm trying to look for, but it's basically like you play this team every single year and they have your number. God, we got to play these guys again. So maybe that's the more mental side of it. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to wake up on Sunday morning and just feel like I got the hell beat out of me, which is probably how Tennessee's felt the last couple years playing these Georgia teams.
Last 8 years.
Yeah, the last eight, not couple.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't get behind all the way the mental thing, but there probably is a little bit of a mental aspect that just kind of lurks in the back of those volunteers' brains. It's like, damn, we got this Georgia team again. So it's going to be a fun one. I'm excited. I'll be going to Rocky Top. I'll be in Neyland Stadium. And man, it's a dangerous place. Better keep my mouth shut, but we're going to pull through with the dogs.
Yeah. I'll pray for your safety in that environment. Definitely not the best group of fans to be around
No.
for a couple hours. But, everyone respects it. Everyone I talk to, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to the game. I'm like, I respect you for doing that. That's awesome that you're going to cheer on our guys away from home. Definitely, I do think that Georgia will win this game. And it's gotten to the point where it's like some games you look at and you're like, until I have a reason to not pick Georgia, I'm picking Georgia. That's the way it's gotten for me with some things. Some other Georgia analysts, it might be that way for, like, I don't know, Alabama against Georgia. So it's kind of the same for me. I definitely think Georgia has the edge in this matchup. And I'll go into a little more depth later on why I think that. But definitely exciting to have some SEC football back and an SEC rivalry for Georgia back. Finally, after a long 10 months of waiting, 11 or however long, waiting for Georgia SEC football to come back. It's great to finally be here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. It's always fun to tee it up in Neyland Stadium, 106,000 strong, and I love being in the away atmosphere. I love wearing red in a sea of orange and sticking out like a sore thumb. I think it's good to be the hated villain in a stadium. And I hope we carry that villain mentality into it. I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did, but when John Gruden came to the Georgia football team and spoke to the team, and he was talking about be the nightmare. I love that. Like, let's be the nightmare. Let's be that team that goes up to Tennessee and spoils their season once again, just like we did in 22 when they were number one. We can do it in 2025 when they come in with all this momentum, and when everybody thought going into the season they might not be all that, and they lose their quarterback and they get a new one in from App State and all this stuff. Let's be the villain and ruin the momentum that they have. I'm excited for it, man.
Be the villain, be the. I knew exactly where you were going with the John Gruden comment just from the start. But definitely, I do think we'll be the villain for the ninth straight year.
Yep.
So that's exciting stuff. Thank you, Hammy, for joining. And go dogs. Looking forward to this weekend.
Go dogs, man.
Big thanks again to Hammy. Love doing that weekly show with him. We'll keep it going for as long as possible. Love getting some more insights, more content for Georgia football. Hey, before we go in further into this episode, I wanted to talk on just a serious note. It's nothing Georgia football related, but I feel like I'd be ignoring kind of an elephant in the room if I didn't bring it up. I always do my faith, my scripture moment. I've struggled to do it sometimes on the show. I've kind of slacked off and not giving y'all something. Um, but I want to address a bigger issue real quick. And then give you my word of encouragement, my word of faith. Obviously, I'm not going to get into specifics or get into anything political. This country has seen a lot of violence and a lot of hate, and it's unfortunate just what's happened these last couple days. Some just horrible acts happening, regardless of where you stand. Violence is violence, evil is evil. But the point I wanted to bring up about this, and you all know what I'm talking about when I bring that up, but just know that in the Bible it does tell us that there is an evil force out to get us. There's evil in this world. There are demonic, satanic things, and every day is a battle with evil. But Jesus has won that battle for us, and we can lean on Him to help us continue to win that battle. I'm just grateful for what He did on the cross. I'm grateful that we have life after our life on earth, and I want you all to hear that today. You may not have to agree with me on that. You may not have to agree with anything else I say, but I want you to hear that and know that Jesus loves you. Jesus died on the cross for you. As crazy as our world's been, especially some of the violence we've seen these last couple of days, just know that. Just keep that with you. We're going to go ahead and move forward now, though, into the podcast. I am going to go ahead and give you my score prediction for this game. Georgia, I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there, just mid-sentence. We're going to go ahead and restart that. Here's my score prediction for Georgia versus Tennessee 2025. Georgia comes in winning 8 straight. Historically have dominated the Vols, especially recently. You'd be shocked to hear that I'm picking Georgia again to defeat Tennessee by a score of 34-17. I've got a couple keys to the game as to why I'm saying this, as to why Georgia will come away with a double-digit victory, a blowout in many cases, and really covering the spread and covering every single line. Georgia's going to own the line of scrimmage in this game, while Austin Peay and Marshall, really more so Austin Peay, though, did give Georgia's offensive line problems. Like I said, I expect those guys to be back up front for Georgia, Ernest Green and Juan Gaston, so I do think that'll look a little different. I do think Mike Bobo is going to open up the playbook. I'm very glad with Mike Bobo, the way he's called this year so far. And really, it's more of a Kirby thing. But I'm glad with the way he's called this year so far, outside of that blunder right before the second half. So, yeah, really not too upset about the way he's done things so far. But I do think he'll open up the playbook more this weekend. I do think Gunner's finally going to take some shots downfield. They've definitely been working with him this week on, hey, you've got open guys down the field. Let's throw it this week. Throw it this week. There's no reason not to. Let it rip. Throw the ball downfield. I think it's going to happen this week for sure. Tennessee's without 2 starting defensive backs, 2 starting cornerbacks. I think that really hurts them against what can be a very lethal Georgia passing attack. Georgia's defense is elite. Plain and simple. That's really one of the ultimate reasons I say this, other than the fact that Georgia just owns Tennessee. Georgia's defense is elite from top to bottom, all phases of the game. Definitely a little less depth on the defensive line, but the linebacker room is elite, the secondary is elite, and that starting line, and really the backup line is good too, in my opinion. It's just when you start to go further and further, you kind of really start to see the drop-off a little bit more. Georgia's defense is elite, and it's not something that Tennessee has seen yet. I think it's really going to give them problems. Give me Georgia 34-17. We're going to go over some of these lines and pick'ems for the week in just a minute. All right, we're going to go over a couple of these lines for the Georgia game this weekend. They're all in favor of Georgia, but I'm going to run through them real quickly. Really, the first one's not necessarily, but in my prediction it is. Georgia and Tennessee, that game will go over 49.5 points, in my opinion. 34-17 adds up to 51. Pretty self-explanatory. Taking the Georgia money line, Georgia covers 3.5. Zach Branch over 59.5 yards. That's out the way. We're going to go ahead and get right into ESPN Pick'em for the week. Had a tough week last week. I went 4-6 last week. I went 1-2 on my spread bets, I believe. Maybe 0-3. I'll have to look at it. But I'm 12-8 overall, 64,000th in the nation. So let's get back up on the leaderboard. We were 5,000th last week. Let's see what we can do. And we're going to run through this pretty quickly as well. Dogs over Tennessee. Georgia Tech over Clemson. I think it's more of a strategic thing with Buster Faulkner. Troy over Memphis. Wazoo over Texas State. WVU over Pittsburgh. App State over Southern Miss. Notre Dame over Texas A&M. South Carolina over Vandy. Duke over Tulane. Cal over Minnesota. I feel like Minnesota's are pretty self-explanatory, or just games that could go either way, and you're like, got to pick somebody. But really, that's all I got for this week. I know I said last week that I would go over all scoring plays. I am going to change that just a little bit. So instead of going over film on the podcast this week, we'll resume that for either next week or the Alabama game. We'll probably just do an in-depth review of film next week from the Georgia-Tennessee game. But what I'm going to do this week, I think I'm just going to make a post about the film and break it down on Instagram. I may even make some videos of it on here, but it's not going to be like a face cam thing. I'm just going to break it down separately. But anyway, I really appreciate you all being here. Pray for our country in this time, as I mentioned earlier in the video. But thank you all. Very glad you all are here. Go Dogs. Beat Tennessee. As always, hate the Vols. Go Dogs.